Hello, and welcome to TeamBBCT's video discussion of our MBA280 Littlefield simulation experience. Our team consists of 4 players, Ryan, Vic, Mo, and James. During this presentation, we will begin with a brief overview of our runs, and then discuss the coordination and teamwork involved in participating in this game. We will also go over the takeaway lessons from our experience, as well as the strategy behind our decisions and the challenges we encountered along the way. So let's begin. The Littlefield simulation provided our team with many interesting lessons regarding capacity management, forecasting, and inventory management. As there were 2 separate but similar runs, we played it safe during our first run. On the other hand, for our second run, we tried riskier approaches based on what we learned from the previous run, which included borrowing money to make purchases. In addition, communication amongst our team was absolutely critical to our success in outperforming Do Nothing in both runs. During each of the runs, our team coordinated our efforts through a combination of in-person meetings, emails, and group text messages. Prior to the start of each round, we met to develop our strategy on how and when to change our inventory reorder point and quantity, as well as what machines should be purchased at the start of the simulation. In addition, we discussed the operational consequences of each of the game's constraints. For example, the 125 WIP limit and the timing of reorders. During our first meeting, our team agreed to work communally in that anyone could make a change, and everyone was responsible for checking on our factory during the simulation. In order for anyone to change an order, however, or add a machine to a station or make any other changes to our factory, one had to first send a message to the others asking for approval. However, if the inquiring party did not receive a response within an hour, they had the authority to act on the situation. This was to allow for immediate action given dire circumstances, since one day in the simulation is equivalent to roughly 30 minutes in real time. Now, one of the main takeaways for our team was the importance of inventory forecasting and resource optimization at a bottleneck. In fact, our team felt that one of our strengths was our ability to foresee bottlenecks and appropriately respond by adding machines at the proper stations. However, on occasion, we did experience a mismatch of inventory with incoming orders. A queue of new, unfilled orders would begin to build when we sometimes ran out of raw materials. As our inventory was replenished and our orders began to once again move through the system, the accumulated queue would move through the system and force each station to operate at maximum utilization. In Littlefield, unlike many real-life factories, there was no consequence for changing contract types. This meant that if the factory was operating at an increasingly slow lead time, we could adjust to contract 1 with the 7-day lead time earning as $750. However, if lead times were low, say under 0.5 days, and appeared as though they would stay that way for a period of time, then it was ideal to switch to contract 3, earning us $1,250. As you can see from the following graphs, at each point during our first run, when we were short on inventory, there is a spike in the queue shortly after production recommences at Station 2. The most noticeable spike for the queue at Station 2 is around day 239, when the queue reached almost 1,000 units. This spike in Station 2's queue resulted from a lack of inventory at day 225, and a shortage that lasted around 3 days. Unfortunately, during these instances of resource and demand mismatch, our lead times increased and revenue was lost. Thus, our team also witnessed firsthand the importance of forecasting raw material needs while being aware of overall factory lead time. And this is a lesson that we would heed in another run. Our team's strategy for beating do nothing was to simply do something. Since do nothing always used contract 1 passively, we knew that if we paid attention to the orders and inventory levels, that we could do a much better job than do nothing. This required us to check the game as often as we could, which sometimes was at the cost of a resource that is very scarce to college students: sleep. However, sacrifices had to be made to beat the bot, and this meant purchasing more machines and changing a contract to align with demand when lead time changed. Our fellow classmates would undoubtedly prove to be far more challenging competitors than do nothing, however. Thus, our team's strategy for getting to the top was a bit more complicated than our strategy for beating do nothing. We tried to foresee bottlenecks and add an appropriate amount of machines to the relevant stations in order to deal with such scenarios. In addition, our team also realized the importance of avoiding running at maximum utilization, mostly because of the time sensitivity of the delivery for our contracts, and also to avoid getting backed up at queue. However, we fell short of reaching the top with this strategy, as we did not plan on losing raw materials so quickly, and subsequently had to run at maximum utilization and lose revenue. In order to be productive, our team forecasted future demand by determining how much process capacity and material inventory were needed to meet demand. To this end, we used historical demand and time series analysis to predict future demand. During our team's first run, the constraints were limited cash and a 1-day delay in the arrival of new machines. Thus, we tried to order machines before a large queue arrived at the station. Our inventory and reorder schedule were also limiting factors. For our second run, we once again had the 1-day arrival delay for new machines, and had to again forecast how many machines would be necessary before a large queue arrived at the station. Unlike the first run, in the second run, every 30 days we needed to ensure that there was enough inventory to cover demand for the following 30 days. The strategy our team used to make the inventory scheduling decision was based on the historical data of inventory, and combining that with the current demand to precisely satisfy the factory's inventory needs. During the first run, we used the first 56 days of inventory data as a baseline and included a sufficient safety stock amount. We then set a reorder point for the inventory while keeping in mind that the inventory order would take up to 7 days to process. During the second run, we had issues with the inventory management. We tried to use our strategy from the first run, and thus we fell short at the end of the month. Once we were short on inventory, all the orders in the queue needed more inventory, which in turn wasted our next inventory order, and a domino effect occurred. Our team increased and later decreased our debt during our second run. We increased our debt on day 148 by several $100,000 in order to purchase more machines, and eventually have enough cash for orders to go through. The amount we borrowed was based on our forecasting calculations for how quickly we would run out of inventory and revenue based on orders. Fortunately, we were able to decrease our debt to zero over a couple of months in the form of 4 separate payments. We based our customer contract on the contracts in the queue, as well as the lead time for these contracts. When the lead time was low, we switched to the second or third contract, as we knew it would take less time, and that we would be able to successfully deliver the order on time. If our lead time was below 0.6, we switched it to contract 3, and if it was between 0.6 and 1, we switched to contract 2. Changing contracts as needed allowed us to deliver on time. If we had contracts backed up in the queue, we switched to contract 1, which would give us 7 days for delivery, and we would then change our operations from FIFO to priority. In wrapping up, we would like to go over some additional information regarding our team's runs that we didn't previously cover. For the first run, we started with 3 machines at Station 1, 1 machine at Station 2, and 1 machine at Station 3. During peak use, we upped the number of machines at Station 1 to 6, to 2 machines at Station 2, and to 2 machines at Station 3. Finally, at the end of our run, we decreased the number of machines at Station 1 to 4, and to 1 machine at Station 2, and 1 machine at Station 3. Since at the end of the simulation, our team would lose control of the factory, we decided to sell off 2 machines at Station 1, and a machine each at Stations 2 and 3. We did this in order to reclaim some cash for machines that would not be seeing too much use in the remaining time. We also left some inventory available in order to cover the remaining 57 days. For Run 2, our team ended with a cash balance of over $600,000 and no debt. The table in this slide shows a summary of our team's sources and uses of cash in the last day before we lost control of our factory. Well, that's all we could fit into this presentation. So thank you, and we hope you enjoyed our discussion of TeamBBCT's Littlefield simulation experience. Also, for those of you that are wondering, absolutely no emojis were harmed in the making of this presentation. Take care.
And I know when that hotline blink, that can only mean one thing.